What is up, everybody? Welcome back. This is episode number 12 of the Hire and Fire podcast with your host, Jeremy Miller. That's me. Chad Sandy joins us again this week. We are talking about career goals, getting promoted, and getting ahead. Kind of a thought of what you want to accomplish in 2020 and or ways you can position yourself for promotions or whatever it may be that you're aspiring to. So enjoy the show, and we'll see you again next week. Hello there, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Jeremy Miller, your friendly host of the Hire and Fire podcast, back with our friend Chad Sandy. Hi, Chad.
What's happening, Jeremy Miller?
Just work, Chad. I don't know about you. You're at work, too. We are shooting podcast number 12 today of the Hire and Fire podcast, and today's episode is going to be specifically kind of surrounding the beginning of the year with what the heck are your goals, career goals, getting promoted, getting ahead, just kind of a what do you want to accomplish this year type discussion. So here we are. Welcome.
Here we are.
Do you want to get promoted?
I do.
I can't get promoted, which sounds ridiculous, but I have the blessing and the curse of having all responsibility. So if everything goes well, I look amazing. Yeah. And if everything goes terrible, I am 100% to blame.
How depressing.
So, it kind of is.
You cannot get promoted.
I cannot get promoted. It's either I'm either winning or I'm losing. It kind of depends. But that's the thing there. And we've talked a lot inside of our four walls here about what our growth strategy is and who we're going to be hiring and when we're going to need to put people in new positions. So we collectively, you potentially individually, what we've talked about, and others will have opportunity to do that. So we can talk about promotions, how you position yourself, how you would advise somebody else to position themselves. And then just in general, career goals. Like goals. Are you a goals guy?
Oh, yeah, big time. I would say career goals, yes, have them.
Have them, like written down, posted career goal guy?
Yeah, because wouldn't you say, most people want to get promoted, right? Most people don't want to just, in our business, just be Joe the recruiter for 40 years, I don't think.
Okay, I love this component of the discussion, and I was hoping that this would come up too, because I think as a general rule, everybody wants to get ahead, quote unquote, but maybe there's moments where you don't want to get promoted. Yeah. Or maybe there might be an opportunity to go for a job and you have to decide whether or not that's the right fit for you. Do you go this round? Do you go for the next one? We can talk about our industry in specific because as a general rule, a lot of companies have this like recruiter to sales promotional component, which we don't do here, right? But is a big dynamic in our industry as a general rule. So any industry insider peeps might appreciate that discussion.
See, now, I don't think a lot of people have career goals. Do you? I think the masses don't. I think they start their jobs and they're ready to work hard and put in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Do you believe most people have career goals defined? Because I don't think they do.
Okay, so we're talking kind of a most percentage. I think I would agree. I have met several people that have that unusual, like, I know what I want to do with my career. The immediate thought in my mind is one of my old colleagues came from money. His dad did unbelievably well in corporate America, was a blankety-blank board member for different companies, and he grew up in that family, right? But he's not a stuck-up asshole about it. Like, he doesn't have a silver spoon problem. Like, he's got an amazing work ethic, but he is unusually driven to almost want to reproduce what his dad did.
Sure.
I don't know if he would word it this way. Maybe I should ask him directly, but we've had enough discussions on it where for him, there's like a family pressure. Like, have you ever known people that like their dad was a doctor and then the doctor dad had 3 kids and then 2 out of 3 of them become doctor guy?
Right. Yep.
And then inside of the family, there's this weird like, are you or are you not in the same line of succession of the previous generation?
Yeah.
I have another buddy whose dad started a financial firm, and 2 of his sons are involved, but the other one was like, dude, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, I'm going to carve my own path, completely different industry.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff can be related to what we're talking about.
I've actually had a different experience with a couple people I've worked with who came from money at the same company, one of my past companies. One was a female recruiter, one was a male recruiter, and both were kind of just real steady eddies, but not super high producers. And it's because they didn't need to. They came from money, and their money situation was already taken care of. They were going to be part of family money for the rest of their life.
Which I can't even come close to understanding.
Right. And so I actually thought the opposite. They seemed to lack motivation.
Yeah.
And my argument in the leadership table, the group,
when discussing them,
would be, look, this person's never going to be a contest winner or a president's club, but they're a steady Eddie at the level they're at. And, if we're going to have 20, 25 recruiters, it's always good to have a handful of people like that you can count on to produce.
Of course.
But they were actually, in my eyes, a little unmotivated.
Well, so interesting topic. So like so for the people that are motivated, where does the motivation come from? Are you trying to prove somebody wrong? Are you trying to impress your friends and family? Do you have a lot of your self-worth wrapped up in your career? Like, where does that motivation come from? Or if you're not motivated, where is that coming from? Did you come from a family that doesn't push it? Is that just not how your personality rolls? Is it right or wrong that you're cool with being a steady Eddie guy? Like, for me, if you were to be like, is it right or is it wrong for somebody to not strive for the next level? And my immediate gut reaction would be, it's wrong.
Because that's how
I work.
Yeah.
But I've not necessarily been ladder climbing motivated. I've always been income growing motivated, which are 2 completely different things.
Yeah. It's a weird dynamic for me, the whole wanting to be promoted or move on up and then having career goals. Because I think most people in America are bought into the whole 8 to 5 mentality, right? You get a job, you work hard, the whole thing I said about the honest day's work for the honest day's pay. But yet, it feels like to me that most people want to move up, get promoted,
get recognized,
make
more money.
They have a problem when they're not being recognized, not being promoted. Yet I do believe most don't have career goals. So it's like they're waiting for it to accidentally happen.
Yeah.
Versus creating goals to make it happen, which is kind of strange to me. Because being promoted, I think, happens, but it rarely just happens.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so interesting point. So you're saying the deliberate, intentional strategy to how to position yourself for the next thing, if you don't have that, aka it written down on paper, which you could generically call career goals, then by default your chances are lower because the amount of times where somebody haphazardly gets promoted is pretty rare.
Sure. Well, let's use us as an example. If I never, ever had conversations with you ever since we started about the future and the company and where I see myself here and where I see myself in the future here, you may just look at me as another sales guy, good sales guy, steady Eddie, he's working, You'd never know what you don't know, and if I never shared it and I never had goals written down, I may or may not get promoted. Again, now I'm leaving it to that promotion just happens.
Well, right, because the only way that happens, if you didn't voice your desire, so if you're somebody out there who wants to get promoted, this is a thing that you think about, that you want to strive towards, but you never make that clear, then you need me, aka somebody in authority to you, to see it without you mentioning it and go out of my way to almost stretch goal you, to say, have you thought about this? You would be a really good fit at it. And what's the likelihood of that?
Right. So now you're leaving your career success or growth purely to chance to some extent. you're certainly taking the control away from yourself completely. If you never ever have any discussions, no one's ever going to know. But then on the flip side, you just kind of alluded to something. What can managers do out there, owners do out there? You can draw that out of people, right? So even if we had never had any conversations about promotion or where I might want to go in the company or with my career, you as an owner could be proactive and draw that out of me, and we could still get to the end point. So,
well, now there's an interesting dynamic. I've said for years that I think, as a general rule, corporate America sucks at promoting from within.
Agreed.
The reason why our industry is getting bigger and bigger year over year is because A, the notion of staying at a company forever is kind of a thing of the past. So people feel like they have to bounce to different organizations to get ahead.
Yep.
In addition, I don't think your run-of-the-mill manager, I don't care if it's a manager, supervisor, director, VP, whatever, I'm not aware of many organizations that have a deliberate compensation plan and or growth from promotion model where managers are motivated to push people up the ranks. So think about it. We do IT related staffing. If one of our clients loses a developer, a systems engineer, a help desk person, who cares what they do? They, being the manager, are paid to run the department. So they just lost maybe one of their best people. So they kind of have two options, right? They either look outside of the company to bring somebody in, and now the bar is high because if they're going to bring somebody in from the outside, they need this person to hit the ground running. So now HR is a huge task to be able to go find the perfect person. A lot of times they either are too busy, don't know the right skill or whatever, and then companies like ours get involved. Mm-hmm. And we charge a premium to do that. That's just how we get paid. Or you could look at a department lower than you, no matter what the company or skill is, and take somebody who would be an up-and-comer. But now you as the manager have to invest 3 to 6 months worth of time, which you may not have, in order to figure out a way to get this guy or gal with a lot of potential, even just up to par with some of your even lower performers in the department. So naturally, what's the motivation?
Right.
So unless my company is telling me I, as a manager, should be promoting from within and that's how I'm going to be judged, then I'm more likely to want to find somebody from outside of the company that can hit the ground running. And that's literally how our industry operates as to why we are growing and they are using external firms to fill positions more than ever, which is a weird dynamic, but true.
Yeah.
So even if you do work for a company where you have promotional opportunities, then it goes back to what you said earlier. Are you making it known? Are you having discussions with your boss? Is there a platform that you have, like what we have here, where every week, for the most part, you guys are in here and we're having one-on-ones? So that could be where you could bring it up. Or if you're not getting a lot of FaceTime with your boss, now you have to be the one to proactively go into that person's office and say, this is what I want to do, and then figure it out from there.
I think it all starts with having the career goals. If you've never, and this is outside of the company you may be working at, first of all, having a general career goal and then getting more specific with it once you've joined a company. Because if the company you're working at, this is why we have ceilings, right? You might have 20 salespeople and one sales manager and one regional VP. So the math may not allow you to reach your career goals, but that's why you got to have the career goals, or you end up in either the dead-end job or disappointed or disillusioned that there's no, whatever. But I think this whole thing goes back to starting with, like I said earlier, I don't think a lot of people have even established what their career goals even are. They just get a job and then they start working sort of mindlessly.
Yeah.
And before you know it, time goes by, whatever that is, and you're sort of in limbo, unhappy, not unhappy, just kind of just going through the motions. Make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I think that's why if you're not voicing your opinion and you're not getting what you want out of your job, that's half the reason why people leave. Mm-hmm. There's a notion in our industry about referrals, and referrals are a big deal. We place a lot of people. We work with different clients. So as salespeople are trying to get referrals from existing managers to connect with other managers inside of a client. Recruiters are trying to get referrals out of candidates for other candidates that they know, right? People are networked. But as a general rule, have you ever thought about this? How many people do you know on a regular basis that are looking for a job, that make it known, that are screaming from the rooftops, they're looking for a new job? Do you hear about that a lot?
Probably not.
I don't either.
No.
Because I think switching jobs is a really personal thing, and you have money involved, you have pride involved, you have desires that you want to accomplish inside of your job or your company or whatever. So even if you're unhappy with whatever it is, maybe you got skipped over for a promotion, maybe you got a raise, but it was peddling nothing, or maybe you got rejected for a raise, or maybe they're looking at promoting you, but they know what you make. So now the company is in the best negotiating position because they know you make 78 grand and they're going to promote you and give you 83. Yep. But you could take your 78 and go to another company and maybe make 93.
Yeah.
So these are where the notions of like, why would I look outside of my company? So unless you have a really deep emotional connection to your organization and where they're going and stuff like that, that's why I think most people leave.
Sure.
Because they're like, I don't know when the hell I'm going to get promoted. I don't know what type of raise I'm going to get. And even if I do get promoted or I do get a raise, do I even like it here? And then they don't really say that out loud. So then you start stewing with this feeling of uneasy or unhappiness. And then default, instead of talking to your boss about it, you update your resume and start talking to people like us.
Yeah. I'm thinking now, that just made me think, the NFL season's coming to a close. We're down.
Sorry, Vikes fans. Sorry about that.
Boo, Packers. we're at a...
I'm a Steelers fan. My team didn't even make it. So what right do I have to talk shit?
We're at a time of the year where there's 4 teams left. So, of course, this is that time of the year where coaches are getting fired. New head coaches are being named. And I was just now thinking about how if I'm a entry-level coach breaking into the NFL coaching ranks and I get my first job as linebackers coach or special teams coach, I'm guessing a lot of those coaches' career goals culminate with becoming a head coach. Yet they're probably not looking at the current team that just hired them as that low-level coach as being the end result where they end up as a head coach. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And
but it doesn't prevent them from taking the job with, the Vikings, even though maybe their career goal is still head coach. Yeah. I want to be a head coach in the NFL. Maybe with the Vikings if it works out here over the years, but there's 31 other opportunities. And I wonder, so now it gets me thinking about staffing. And do you think people take jobs with staffing companies looking at that, or is it
internal employees like recruiters and salespeople?
Sure. I can tell you honestly, when I came here, that was one of the things that attracted me, is that, well, because they're a new company and growing, certainly even if it's not stated, if I do really well, I can make opportunities.
And I was clear in the process explaining what I want to do.
Right.
So I would say to everybody, like, here's what we're going to do to grow the team, and here's what the hierarchy is going to look like. So whether or not you want to get promoted doesn't matter. I'm just telling you. So if you do want to get promoted, then that could be open to you. If not, then I just want to explain to you what our expansion plans are.
So what would I'm curious now, what would your advice be to a recruiter out there? We'll use recruiter, it could be salesperson, but a recruiter out there in staffing who wants to be a recruiting manager, but is working for a staffing company that has X number of recruiters, and the recruiting manager's been there like 15 years, 20 years, he or she, and it doesn't appear they're going anywhere. But yet that person has a career goal to be a recruiting manager or a branch manager. what might your advice be to someone like that, where they might be thinking, well, the opportunity doesn't exist here, but yet I really love my job here and I'm performing, but long term I don't want to be Chad, the recruiter, the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Thoughts? It's a tough one.
No, it's not. It's
No?
not for me.
No.
The 23-year-old out there who might be in this experience doesn't want to hear it. You got to pay your dues, kid.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry for the bad news, but like, you got to earn it. And we're in a commission-based environment where earning it is pretty clear. It's in black and white.
Yeah.
You know, so if that's what you want, you have to, so a combination of things, you have to perform, you have to crush it, you have to outperform others around you. Most of the time, you have to be kind of the rah-rah cheerleader in regards to helping the team itself grow, not just you grow. Because in a lot of ways, you got to do the next job before you get a chance to do the next job. So, but that's tough, man. Your son's in this exact spot, right? He's jumping into the engineering field, and he might be hotshot guy. But like it or not, every person around him has more experience, has paid more dues, like, you know. But that's a bitter pill to swallow, where you're like, I'm low man on the totem pole, and I want to get ahead. And there are times where you just have to look at somebody and just be like, hey, man, like, I mean, in theory, could you take your 18 months of experience and go to another company and get a promotion? Maybe.
But
Maybe.
Therein lies one of the mistakes I think I see a lot of people make in our industry, is they may see that there's nowhere to jump up title-wise or title hierarchy. There's nowhere to jump in that category, so the only other place to jump is money, right? So they work 2 years here. Well, there's no way I'm going to be the recruiting manager here in the next year or two, so I have a chance to make 10 grand more, 20 grand more over here. And then the same thing happens over here, and they work a year or two, and then they see no room for growth, no place for growth. But they have an opportunity over here that pays another $10,000, and pretty soon you got this person who has a resume that they're 26 years old and they've been to 4 different companies, and they've earned more money all along because our industry is, you know, the supply and demand of our industry and the sheer number of staffing firms would allow that. And all of a sudden you find yourself 26, 27 years old, you've been at like 4 different companies already, earning more money all the way along, but you've now actually kind of hurt, you know, now your resume looks worse in terms of stability and then growth into a recruiting manager role. So at some point, I'm talking my way through this right now, but at some point you probably do need to make a decision to like gut it out, and put in your dues, so you can get to that level. Otherwise, you'll just turn into the recruiter person who jumps from job to job every 2 years and ends up 35 years old wondering why you're still in staffing.
Well, I just think it's really hard. I don't care what industry you're in. When you're brand new, you're not trusted to do everything.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, that's fair because you haven't earned that. Then another dynamic we haven't even talked about is, are you sure? Are you friggin' sure you want to get promoted? Like, just because you perceive it as a better job, are you sure? Because half of what you might like about your industry or your job is the daily duties, and you're going to be walking away from that to move into managerial guy.
Yeah.
And then in addition, now you're a lot of people's boss. So when you guys used to go to happy hour, or you'd go to lunch and you guys would be talking shit on what the company is doing, processes, or this dumbass manager that, or I can't believe they haven't fired Susie, or whatever the hell the discussion is, you don't get that anymore. Yeah. Now the employees around you talk about you, and you're the one excluded from it. So like, are you sure? And then there's moments where, what if the career is going really good? My little brother, for example, is kind of in the senior manager category at a major corporation out in Denver. And he is smart enough now that he's in his mid-30s to look at the director level people and go, do I really want to be that guy?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
be careful what you wish for.
Right. So like, you know what? My boss is great. I really like her. I think I can do her job. Or maybe I feel like I could do his or her job better than her or him, but like, is that really the job that you want?
Yeah.
So now what if you get what you're asking for
It makes
and
me
you don't even like it?
It makes me think of that story I've told you before about the sales guy at the radio station.
Yeah, he was just happy.
When my uncle paraded me through there, and he was this old guy, and why isn't that guy in management? And my uncle says, because that old guy there makes $300,000 a year and works 40 hours a week only, and goes home to his family.
And he's
night.
great with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to be careful.
So
what
when do you need to look in the mirror and say, what I have right now is sufficient, and I can at least game plan for the future, but right now this is working.
Right.
For me, for example, having children and being married, I'm no longer, but being married for years, it was, I won't relocate and I won't travel. So in my old company, that kind of, you dismissed yourself. Now, I didn't want management there. I truly didn't. I wasn't pushed into it, but I was highly encouraged to take on more responsibility. And I took on a lot of local responsibility, leadership team, etc. But I didn't have a desire because I'd been there long enough to be able to look around and go, I'm not going to sell my soul to get a title. And I felt like I would have had to have done that, whether it be believing in processes that I didn't believe in and I'd have to kind of fake it, which wasn't the right call for me or the company. And then in addition, do I want to be travel relocate guy? No. Do I want to make the kind of money our RVPs are making? Damn right. But that is another 2 or 3 jobs in between where I am now and where they are, and probably a few full-blown family relos. And I'm like, I don't want to reload at all, let alone reload a few times in order to position myself for this. So just because the money looks good doesn't mean that it's necessarily a solution. Yeah. Here's another one in our industry that happens all the time. In most large staffing companies, they believe in a promote from within model from recruiters to salespeople.
Yep.
And recruiters perceive the promotion as a better job, higher paying job, more respected job, but it's a completely different job. Mm-hmm. It's selling to an end client more so than working with consultants. Are you sure that's what you want to do?
Right.
And then in addition to that, what they would do in a lot of times is they would be frustrated or stagnant or stuck in their existing recruiting job. They've been stuck at the same spread level. They're not making any more money, and they perceive this promotion as almost a get out of jail free card for their current life. Mm-hmm. They get promoted. They feel that weight off the shoulder, and they do nothing for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Right. And then before you know it, now they're in a new job with even more pressure, and you're stuck. You can't go back.
Yeah.
You could go back, but it's too humbling.
Right. Sometimes the best move is to stay put. And you can still, in terms of promotions, under the umbrella of promotions, you can still work your way up the quote ladder by just staying put. What I mean is, if someone listening out there is working in an office that has 10, 12 recruiters and you're ranked 8th, 9th, you can, even if you don't want to work your way into management or whatnot, you can still work your way up to be that top recruiter. I mean, there's still, to me, that would still fall under career goals. How can I be the top recruiter here and produce the lifestyle and the life I want?
I think so too, at least in our industry. I was motivated by money, so I was utilizing the recruiter job as a way to make more and more and more money. I was a little bit of an example of what you described earlier, where I wasn't even looking for a promotion, but I performed my way into it, where I was given these opportunities. And frankly, in a lot of ways, I didn't even want to do some of the things that I had to do. I did start traveling a decent amount, and by decent, I mean like 3, 4, 5 times a year, not every other week. And that was a little bit of a drag because I didn't really get paid to do that per se. It was just kind of an extra added duty, but I grew because of it, right? So I had to put myself in an uncomfortable situation, taking on more responsibility to be able to handle that responsibility. If it wasn't for that, I would have never had myself in a position to run this company, because I would have never have been exposed to any levels of management or strategy or whatever. But ultimately, when I got to the point where it was like, all right, I've made as much money as I can make here, and the only logical move to make more or get more is to get promoted, I didn't want to. And then once I figured out what that looked like and understood how management operated, then I knew that I was kind of stuck. Because you have to follow management anyways.
No, you seem like a guy that would not be happy just with the status quo for too long.
Unfortunately, that's true.
So when you hit that level of spread, which for those in staffing, that was for you it was 40,000+ a week in gross profit, which for those listening, that should, to all of us, should be a very, very, very high number. People should be thinking, wow, that was really good. When you hit 40 and you didn't want to get into management, and you've it's going to be pretty tough to do much more than 40, wouldn't you have said?
100%.
Right. You really did hit a point where there was a law of diminishing returns. Like, you were already putting in maximum hours, maximum effort. Was there ever a time where you were obviously still young in your 30s? Did you ever think, sure, I'll just maintain this 40K spread now for the next 20 years and make a couple, $200,000-$300,000 a year and be happy? Was there ever that moment? Or, because I think, knowing you, if there was, it wouldn't have lasted long.
Well, that, to be honest with you, I didn't know about myself, and I had to learn that the hard way, because I did subscribe to that mentality of like, this is where I'm meant to be. Why would I ever complain about making multiple hundreds of thousands a year? And I wanted to be your radio guy. Like, I wanted to be this is great. Like, my wife stays home. My kids go to the schools I want them to go to. I have a nice house. I make good money, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately for me, I don't stick very well with the status quo. So, and I think we talked about this in a previous episode, but like, I have a bit of an insatiable appetite. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, that means that I'm very rarely happy and satisfied with where I am. But the byproduct is that I'm always pushing the envelope to earn and be more. So if you're a weirdo like me, then
start your own company.
Well, that could be a solution. Or you just, if that's kind of how you roll, then you do need to be a little bit more forward thinking about, okay, when will I probably feel stuck, and what do I have to do to position myself? I think you've done that really well here, where you've come in and you're like, I know what I have to do. I have to kill this job. I have to perform. I have to out-earn everybody. I have to beat everybody in numbers. But at the same time, my main motivator to do that is to be able to position myself for the next thing. That's where I got stuck, and that was my problem. Mm-hmm. Is I got myself stuck with an organization where, again, I was doing well, but I felt stuck, and then my attitude went sour, and then by default, with the more sour your attitude gets, the more you're going to fall out of favor.
Yeah. So you really need to be doing something or in something where there is no ceiling. And in that context, you've found the perfect thing. Because as a business owner, there is no ceiling. You could have, just pick a number, 50 offices, all at maximum, whatever those offices. They're just maxed out, earning the most revenue they ever could in their geography, and you can always have more offices.
Yeah.
So to that end, you're now in a position as owner in a staffing business that there really should never be a time where you go, boy, I'm stuck. I really can't go anywhere anymore. And there's nowhere left to go up.
Yeah, but by default, that means that I have to keep putting myself in situations where nobody enjoys. How many people out there really thrive on change? Not a lot.
Right.
Most of us are more comfortable with the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way but I get myself in a position where I have to change in order to be able to even survive. So by default, I too like comfort. I like consistency. I like stability. But in order for me to grow doing whatever I'm doing, I have to upset the apple cart of all of those dynamics. I have to make myself uncomfortable. I have to change a pattern which is consistent and predictable, and now that feels weird. And then I have to start doing new stuff, which in and of itself is awkward, new, I'm going to make mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. So I very well understand anybody out there that just has a sense of comfort and contentment with where they are.
Which is
it just doesn't work for me for a long period of time.
Right, and which is okay for people that have that sense of comfort with where they are. But if a person is sitting there right now and they're comfortable where they are and they really are genuinely happy, but they have this, disappointment or or frustration about not being able to rise or be promoted, that should probably come with a warning label of you're going to need to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just like you just said.
Well, okay, so the story that pops in my head is one of my old colleagues at my old job ended up leaving, and I had asked him at one point, you were an ass kicker by every stretch of the imagination, and you surprised the company by leaving, and they didn't want you to go, and they felt cornered. And I just asked him, I'm like, what could they have done to be able to prevent you from leaving? And his advice basically was as simple as, nobody fucking asked. Nobody asked. They never asked me how I was doing, whether or not I was satisfied. They just presumed that since I was doing so well, that why would I ever want to go?
Right. You must be happy.
You must be happy because you're performing and making money. So that taught me above anything else of the oh, okay. So I, as a manager, have to regularly be talking to my employees, because if I'm not asking them how they're feeling, that's how I'm going to lose people. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to lose people no matter what. But there might be some of the 20%ers out there that I really, really don't want to lose. But if I don't know what they want to do, then I'm going to end up losing them. So what if you're a manager and your best employee comes up to you and says, I want up. I want up or I want out. Well, what do? You don't want to lose your best employee. So what? You don't do anything and they leave and then you lose them there? Or you help them get promoted and they go to another group and you lose them anyways. Right? So that's what goes back to my comment earlier of if corporations on some level were to have some type of bonus or incentive plan where they were encouraged or rewarded for getting their staff promoted, then it would be easy. And then you would just understand that that's the nature of the department. Some of my people, I need to help them get out of here. And then by default, I have to always be uplifting, building the rest of them so that I can turn more of them into ass kickers. And I just think as a general rule, it's really tough to do that because, again, you're paid to run the department. You're not paid to get people promoted.
Right.
And your boss won't really care or view that as a suitable excuse that you didn't accomplish what you needed to do because two of your best people got promoted. That's not an excuse. So managers sometimes have themselves in a weird spot.
Yeah. That person you were just describing makes me think of a previous company I worked for where the owner of the company would tell us as leaders in the local office, turnover is normal. You're gonna lose people. In our business, turnover is a thing. But when you start losing people in your top 10 or top 20%, that's on you guys. And they had a different, they were a more mature company. Obviously, they had grown and they had many offices, just like your previous company. And so they actually did have a plan in place of promotion to existing positions or finding out what the person's likes were and where their interests lie, and then potentially creating a career path for them, and essentially sometimes creating a whole new role. If someone was interested in consultant care, we were a growing branch. There was no need for consulting care at the time at a certain level, but as the company grew, because of their requirements of lunching and coffeeing with the working consultants, eventually it gets to a point, the recruiter or the salesperson, there's just physically too many people to have lunch with once a month, or you can't do your job. So, for example, we had a person who that was something they were interested in. They recognized that was part of the company's culture, having regular lunches and staying in touch with consultants and using those relationships to learn more about what was going on at the client. And that person recognized, as we grow, maybe that would be a need for an actual role, a position in the company. And so that person came to us, and we created a path. If you do A, B, C, then we'll create that for you.
Yeah.
And they ultimately got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think an expanding organization that can see the direction makes sense. But if you're a Fortune 100 company, you already have 20,000 employees or something ridiculous. You know, I've never been an executive in an organization that size to understand how and why they're doing what they're doing. I just get the vibe that they want to get people promoted, and ideally that would be the right strategy. But I don't really know how good companies are at actually executing on that. Yeah. Is that one of their metrics at the end of the year that the CEO or whatever is looking at, saying how many people got promoted or how many high performers that scored X on their annual review, or if they're in a revenue generating job, they hit X level of revenue or profitability, but they left, like, you know, how negative is that? My old company used to track what percentage of former contest winners left year over year.
Do you remember ballpark what it might have
I remember one year, in give or take, I'm going to guess it was 2014 or so, that it was really high. Like 29% of contest winners left the company. That could have been one contest or 20 contests. They could have been people who quit or got fired. It was just a straight up number.
Okay, let me ask you, were executives concerned about that number? And then the second part of the question would be, do you think that was an issue?
I don't know if that was above my pay grade. I don't know if they were concerned or not. I don't know the context of the number year over year. So maybe that was up or maybe that was down.
Yeah. Because all those people couldn't have just left to become branch managers somewhere else.
No. But again, you know, it depends, right? So what if you have an employee that was an ass kicker for a while and then had a down couple of years? If they leave, technically they're a contest winner that left. But do you really view it that way as a manager? Maybe or maybe not, if they just missed contests 2 years in a row. You know, so I don't really know what the solution is to that per se, but if I'm in their shoes and I'm losing 30% contest winners, something's wrong.
Right.
People, as a general rule, that have already accomplished something are thinking that they will be better off by leaving the company and either starting elsewhere or leaving the industry or whatever that looks like, and that can't be good, right?
Right. I would hope that executives are looking at that number going, what's up?
Right.
Right? These are people that have reached the pinnacle in sales and recruiting. Why are they leaving?
And have made at least decent money for a minimum of a year, have hit quarterly bonuses, have gone on sales incentive trips. They've seen the rewards that can be there. And for some reason, those rewards were not good enough to overcome their fear or anxiety of climbing Mount Everest again. Because let's face it, that's what we do every year.
Yeah.
So I don't know, or maybe they weren't cut out for a commission-based job after all.
Yeah.
And maybe it was a good thing that they left. I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's tough to really know, but you know, going back to the generic topic of career goals and getting promoted, if you're a salaried individual, you're probably motivated to get promoted because either A, you've accomplished what you could accomplish in your current status in your career trajectory, or B, you actually want to be a manager, decision maker, and climb into that rank. But those are two completely different motivators.
Right.
Wanting to make more money and wanting to be a part of management. I was always 100% about making more money.
Yeah.
But I was very unsure about wanting to be a manager. And it wasn't as though I didn't believe in myself. It was just like, is this the right company for me to be that person? So if you're in a job right now and you have an opportunity to go for a promotion, yes, the title and the money advancement will feel good, but is that the right company for you to stake your claim in the ground of being a manager? Do you believe in the direction of the company? Do you believe in what processes are already in place in the department? If you do, then raise your hand emphatically, because you can be a propellant. Am I using that word the right way? You can be you can propel the company further in the advancement of that initiative. You can be a friggin' champion of where the company is going because you believe you believe in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I would have been the worst person for them to put in management. I was already vocal about the shit I didn't believe in.
Right.
So even if I wanted a promotion, I shouldn't have got it.
Yeah.
But my production was there where I was given a lot of that. But again, I never raised my hand to become director level this, branch level that, regional, whatever. Like that wasn't my thing.
So I have an opinion on this, but I'd like your opinion first. What do you think? Tell me about your thoughts on the correlation between being a high producer and a great manager.
Okay, so you're already a great producer, and is there a correlation between how you perform in your job and then how you would be a great manager? I think work ethic, I think desire to excel, those are the two things that pop into my head right away. But then immediately I jump to sports analogies like, just because Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan doesn't mean that he's going to be a good frickin' basketball coach. So, and, oh, by the way, going back to the NFL analogy, half the best coaches in the NFL are shitty half-ass players. Mm-hmm. They were middle-of-the-road special teams players, and they got into coaching and became amazing. Now, there's people like Mike Vrabel for the Titans right now that was amazing, right? Won multiple Super Bowls, very good. And there are other examples like that. But I think once you've established yourself as a legitimate, consistent, year-over-year performer, I would find it hard to believe that if you got into management that you would all of a sudden lose that mentality. So I think that mentality is probably what will propel you forward. I guess that's my simple answer.
See, I think there's a correlation, but I don't think it's a heavy correlation. I think the traits of the very strong work ethic that you mentioned, yeah, big time correlation. I think some of your best managers and leaders were average to above average producers at best. And for me personally, when I think about the companies I've worked at, now you're an exception, obviously. But when I think back to...
I don't think so, though, and I'll tell you why, but go ahead.
Well, okay, you're an exception in the sense that you were a very, very high producer.
I was a very, very high producer, but for that reason is probably why I would have been a bad manager.
Yeah.
As opposed to being a good man. I would have been the wrong person for management there.
Yeah.
But the way I manage here is completely different because I get to do it my own way.
Right. One of my previous companies, at the time I left, the person that headed up at one time all of recruiting was one of the original recruiters in the company.
Okay.
Never the highest spread level he reached was 15K.
Okay.
1.5. Now that's good. It's for a recruiter. I think hitting 15 might be like a salesperson hitting 20, 25.
At a minimum, it's very respectable.
Yeah,
very respectable.
Mm-hmm. But it ain't 40.
No.
And that person was a phenomenal leader of people.
Clearly.
And executive over a recruiting staff of a couple hundred. But he was an average. He was a little bit above average producer. He was a B. He was a B. And so I tend to think some of your best managers aren't necessarily your top producers, and I think that's a mistake I see with some staffing firms. Is I think sometimes they only look at the top couple producers as candidates for promotion. I think they might be missing out on some good people. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great point.
Did you? So when you were cruising along at 43K,
I don't know if I ever cruised at that number, but go ahead.
So you're at 40K. Can you think of any recruiters that were there that maybe were at 15, 20, 25 that you would think that person would have been a great manager?
Of course.
And they never really got considered.
Well, okay. Their hierarchy was different, so they didn't have recruiting managers. And for that, okay, so this is an interesting dynamic in the industry. So again, if you work for a large staffing firm out there, you'll know exactly what I mean. Their dynamic was, so instead of answering your question, I'm going to answer it with the same players involved, just a different way. Whenever I was at my highest level and I was mentoring, for lack of a better word, that 15,000 producer that you're describing, my advice to them was, you and I both know that the way this company is organized is that almost everybody in management got promoted through the sales rank. So if you wanted to get into leadership and ultimately high levels of leadership, you had to get out of recruiting into sales, then you had to produce in sales, then you might have an opportunity to move into management from there.
Same with where I was.
There were very few true leadership opportunities that were given out of the recruiter rank. My old firm, has since righted that wrong at least a little bit, and they've figured out a way to do that. But for them, still, it holds true. So almost every regional this, national that, director this, VP that, 95% of them came from the sales rank and moved into those roles. So my advice to that person in your story was, be careful, because you're now at 15,000. If you continue to kick ass and you get north of 20 grand in spread, you're going to out earn your promotion. So you're going to be making too much money to seriously consider going into sales. And if your ultimate goal is management, you better do it sooner than later. Yep. Because whenever you get to north of 20 grand in spread, at least the way their comp plan worked, now you're making $1.50 or whatever the numbers were. And it's going to be an incredibly bitter pill for you to have all the blood, sweat, and tears of the 2, 3, 4 years or whatever it took for you to get to 20. And you have to be willing to walk away from it, go into a brand new job, different job, mind you, where you're selling to the client, and have to build that son of a bitch from 0 to 20 again in order to be able to get promoted. So if you want to get promoted, do it now. And my Mendoza line for them being there for as long as I was right around 16 or 17. If you get any higher than 16 or 17, it's going to be really tough for you to do that. In a normal organization, and by that I mean just salaried, whatever your field is, it's a little bit of a different equation. It's more of where do you feel called to be? And no, you don't have to be the best nurse to become a nursing manager or whatever that is. Right. You don't have to be the best financial analyst to become the next manager of the financial analyst department. And I think the reason why is because there are people like me that are thriving by being top performers just doing the job, where you, in your situation, might have a few people above the rank in your department that are quote unquote better or outperforming you, but they just might be better fit for what they're doing. And you might be just a better fit for the next opportunity.
It made me think of a person I know that is a high-level executive at 3M. She's been there over 30 years. And I asked, she started as an executive assistant.
Good for her.
Yeah, and I asked her, how'd you climb? And you know what she said? Now, this is 3M. So now you're putting yourself in the category of, I'm working for a Fortune 1 kind of company. She literally, this was her answer. From the day I started, within a few months, I would apply. You know how they post internal
Oh,
jobs?
sure, yeah.
I would apply for everything. And then I'd go boop, and I'd be up here. And then I would just, work there a few months and immediately start applying for internal postings. And she just bounced her way right up the ladder from literally an executive assistant to a
Boom.
senior executive
Yeah.
in the company.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a lot of ways to skin the cat.
Well, yeah, but in that setup, you're in a major corporation that has a sophisticated intranet that has jobs that you can view that are posted for certain periods of time, internal.
But I also go back to, if we're talking career goals, I would say what separated her.
The desire
the
that she was
desire.
willing to go for it.
She had a desire to climb the ladder, and I would guess she probably was rarely the top performer, whatever the definition of top performer was in her role. But most of her peers in all those various roles were probably just, time to bake the donuts, doing the 8 to 5 thing,
Yeah.
wondering why they're not getting promoted.
Right.
And she just went after it.
Which I would say is analogous to if you work for a smaller company where you don't have the automatic apply on the intranet setup, is where you kind of have no choice but to lean on the people above you. Mm-hmm. And where if she was in a smaller company, she probably could have got away with something similar, but she would have had to have been in every one of her boss's office saying, I would like to look at the next thing. I would like to look at the next thing. But then again, you can get stuck where you got promoted twice over the last 4 years, but then this manager is not giving you a shot, is not stopping what he or she's doing to be able to help promote you, quote unquote, to other departments or what have you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people end up leaving. So good for her that A, it worked, B, she clearly is good at what she does, and then C, they had a process in place for her to go about that.
Right. She found the path.
She figured out the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because had she just stayed as executive assistant and stayed in that swim lane only, senior executive
Yeah.
assistant,
Yeah.
executive assistant to the VP, she probably would have really limited her ability to grow within the company. But in that case, she figured out how to cross various swim lanes within the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I think it really does go back to the beginning point where you're sitting here thinking to yourself, okay, I want to accomplish something this year. It's the very, very beginning of 2020. What do I want that to look like? What am I motivated by? What I would put, I know it sounds dumb, but put it down on paper. And it's the 21st century, so put it in your damn iPhone if you have to, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to write this stuff down or type up a Word document or whatever. Set a calendar reminder. Set a calendar reminder where every month or every quarter, you're reevaluating. What do you want to do? What's available? Did you or did you not have discussions with people around you? Only you know whether or not you're stuck. And then if you're stuck, then yeah, you might have to make the decision to either A, apply for a higher level position at another company. If you've never been a manager before and you're hoping to be a manager for the first time at a new company, that's one of the hardest things to do. Mm-hmm. So I would highly recommend talking to an executive level search firm or even a staffing company like ours, just because we know how to manipulate resumes. And by manipulate, I don't mean make shit up. I mean like how to lay it out, how to organize the bullet points, how to accentuate your experience and your managerial experience, how to reword titles. Like there's a lot of things you can do on paper that we can help you with. But you might end up finding yourself in a spot where you have to take a parallel lateral move, go to another company, maybe even a competing company, where you get the same job, hopefully with a little bit more money, and then you're just crossing your fingers that you found the right environment and that they weren't feeding you bullshit in the interview process about how they promote from within.
Right.
Or, okay, maybe you're worried about how to find a company that's known to be good at promoting from within. Well, personally, I think Glassdoor is worthless. I don't think the reviews on Glassdoor is a good thing to go by, primarily because the majority of negative reviews on there are ex-Bitter employees. And who's more likely to put something in a survey?
Right.
The angry people, right?
Right.
So
The comment box at the restaurant's not filled
It's
with
not-
great
with
hamburgers.
compliments.
Yeah.
Correct. So, maybe word of mouth, maybe asking around, maybe trying to, if you get an interview with a company, maybe go into LinkedIn and do a keyword search for your first level connections. If you're applying to, let's pick a really big company around here, if you're going to work for Target Corporation, you can obviously go on LinkedIn and do some target searches with your first level connections and find maybe even just 2 or 3 people that are in your circle of influence that you can say, hey, I'm going to Target or thinking about going to Target because my ability to get promoted is not working in my current role. Do they or do they not do a good job of promoting from within? And then maybe you can get some evidence to know whether or not where you're going is going to give you that.
I would also recommend that within your current organization, you look up instead of down. Maybe spend less time wallowing and complaining with the complaint.
Oh, I like this.
So instead of spending your time with all the complainers, you start looking up at the people that are going where you want to go, and latch onto them. Learn from them. Learn what they're doing. What did they do to get where they're at or where they're going? And
What if you find out that the tack to get promoted is something you don't want to do?
Oof. Well, define don't want to do.
Okay, I'm not talking anything super risque like breaking the law or something like that. I just mean I watched people in a few different companies that I've worked for have to truly sell their soul in order to get promoted because they did exactly what you're describing. They started looking up and they realized, oh, the way to get ahead is to kiss people's asses. And not only do I have to not wallow with the negatives, now I have to be with a smile on my face pretending that I agree with all of the shit that everybody else doesn't agree with in order to show the higher ups that I'm the right person. Are you sure you want to kiss people's ass to get ahead? Because if it works, ruh-roh, now you have to keep doing it.
Right.
And then now people below you are going to be doing that to you because they see that it worked for you and others around you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my simple advice would be you have to be true to yourself. So, if you're all for when in Rome, great. But if not, you need to establish that. And my recommendation would be to be true to yourself. Otherwise, if you follow along and check the boxes and do what you're going to have to do to become a manager, and it's not really what you want to do or feel good about doing, given yourself, your soul, how you are, even once you get the promotion, you're never going to be happy.
100%. 100%. I've just never been a really good yes man. And maybe that's why I've lost jobs and maybe that's why I'm not married anymore. But I know that about me. So that's why I knew that I had to start my own company. Now, it was a ballsy move. We all know how many companies fail. We're absolutely capable of failing. We are not immune, right? I have to come here every day and do what I can to build it. So then what I have to do is be able to build an organization, a framework, a strategy, a managerial style, etc., that other people would agree with and want to get on board with. So that was my singular challenge about how I'm going to do this. So if you've truly thought about starting your own company because you've seen how it's doable or you're in an industry where you feel like it could be the right thing, A, do you want to be the person where the buck stops? Everybody, it sounds good in theory, but are you sure? B, do you understand what it's going to take financially and or emotionally to be able to pull that off? Because I can tell you running a company is one of the hardest, most lonely things I've ever done in my life. Hands down. But that was what I needed to do to be true to myself, like what you're describing. So maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe it's just you have to decide, are you a better fit for a small company or a big company? Maybe you feel like you'll fit better in a smaller intimate.
Right.
Maybe you feel like you've been in this small, intimate, and that family dynamic has caused too much strife in the company, and therefore you want to go work for a bigger one. Be strategic about it. Have that be part of your goals. Okay, maybe one of my goals in 2020 is to get promoted. Well, why? What do you want? You want money, or do you want the title, or do you want both? And then based on that, what type of company? Is this the right company to get promoted in? Or do you want the promotion, but you think it might be with another organization? And then based on that, what do you want it to be? And if you're working with recruiters like ours, we want to know that stuff. Like, we want you to come into a meeting and be like, this is what I'm trying to do. So this is important to me. Now, a lot of times we're not dealing with promotion related stuff. We're dealing with people just looking for another parallel job or whatever you want to call it. But be deliberate. Have it on paper, in your iPhone, whatever. I'm a big fan of the calendar invite thing. If you want to accomplish something, you need to take a long-term goal, chunk it into smaller increments, and take those daily, weekly steps to be able to position yourself towards that. And then, presuming you perform, then you see what the hell happens.
Right.
So get ahead. It's the only way to get ahead. Like, I don't care who you are. Okay, let's go back to something we mentioned at the beginning. A lot of times people don't understand what it takes to pay their dues. And that's very exhausting. But that might be the component that you have to embrace. And you might have to embrace it with a smile on your face, because that in and of itself is what you have to do to position yourself. I don't know. But
I would also add, I think oftentimes people get too focused on the money. And I think if you're always just chasing money, that's a bad recipe, personally. That's, when you alluded to, do you want the promotion for the money or for the title, or is it both? I think people who fall into that rut of only chasing the money, whether that means job hopping or whatnot, is a recipe for not disaster, but certainly close. And oftentimes I think a lot of people aren't looking at their personal life in conjunction with that. So if I was talking to somebody that was constantly chasing the money, whether it's job hopping for 10 grand a year more, 15 or 5 or whatever, my advice might be to look at their personal situation as well. So if their problem is, I just can't get ahead, in addition to what's going on here professionally, personally, they might have a spending problem. And I don't want to, that could be a whole nother topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I make 10 grand more, but then I spend 12.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I never getting ahead? I made 15 more, but then I bought the truck.
Okay, totally agree. My devil's advocate to that would be, I've seen so many people, especially guys, I guess I haven't thought about it from a male-female difference perspective, but I guess my memories pop to guys where all of a sudden they're expecting kid number 1. And that, holy shit, I have to get moving here, really kicks into gear. Mm-hmm. And maybe that is your motivator. And maybe you can be like, all right, it's time to get serious here. Like, the wife's pregnant, we're adopting, I got married, and he or she has some kids that I'm going to be involved. Whatever the situation is, knowing that in your personal life might be a big motivator. But I think going back to your point, okay, but be careful. Like, just because you can go to another company and make another 8 grand, which might be in the short term life-changing, are you sure that you want to leave the company that you're at? Are you sure that where you're going is going to help you go where you want to go? Because right now that extra 8 grand looks amazing, but if you look back, you've been there before. You've chased the money before. I don't care if you went from McDonald's to frickin' Burger King for an extra $2 an hour. We've all been there.
Yep.
Where you've chased the money, and at the beginning it's very sufficient and you're loving it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, so now I have the newer car, or I can afford the nicer place, or I can get out of debt, but now I'm just as unhappy with the extra 8 grand as I was before with the 8 grand less.
Yeah, and in the long term, it actually hinders you.
It could. Yeah. It could. We work with a lot of consultants that are hourly based people. And this is an interesting dance these guys and gals have to dance through, because at any given moment, they probably could leave a project and go make more money. But what are you doing to your reputation? Are you burning a bridge with this client by leaving early? When do you leave early? Do you never leave early? At what point do you chase the money and run the risk? These things can bite you, whether it be job jumping on your resume or burning a bridge with a staffing company or leaving Wells Fargo in a not so professional way. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, you have a chance to go back, but you have a black mark on your file in HR. Like these things, it's a small world per se.
Yep.
So, you have to be deliberate and intentional about knowing what you want now, but taking that in a bigger context of what you want down the road. And I had to be careful with that too, starting my own company. Like I have documented goals that I built for myself and shared with everybody on what we're going to be doing. And I knew opening new offices in the country means guess who's traveling? This guy. So now I have to do that.
He pointed to himself.
To me. I pointed to me. I have to do that, right?
Yeah.
And even if I want to grow this company to the levels of which I know that I'm capable of doing so, I have to be willing to eat shit for a period of time and go do that. And then, maybe eventually down the road, if I build this thing into something amazing, then I'll have people under me that can start doing that. But I'm going to have to do all of that shit all the way up the ranks. Mm-hmm. Is that what I want? Is that, yes, right? I put it down and I had to decide, like, that's what I want. And if I didn't want that, then I would have to be honest with you guys coming in here about what I'm going to be doing, and that may or may not be interesting to you.
Yeah.
And nobody builds something on their own. I don't care if you think you did it on your own. Half the reason why I was at those levels of spread that you were stroking my ego about earlier was because I was with an amazingly good company,
right,
who was really freaking well established and had some ass kickers around me. And there's no way I would have been able to perform at that level without that established, dominant player of a company. I'm fortunate in my fate of my career that I rode that wave with them and thrived. So now I can bring that mentality elsewhere. But if I wouldn't have stayed there for the long haul, I don't think I ever would have figured that out.
Yeah.
And that's not just me, that was them.
Yeah.
And then I figured out how to fit within their system. And it worked very, very well for both sides for 11 years, and then it ran its course. You know what I mean? So
get those goals down on paper.
Get the goals down on paper.
Be intentional.
Be intentional. Work the math backwards. If you want to become an executive someday, how many different job hops or promotions are you realistically looking at? Look at the next one. Okay, if I'm going to get promoted, it will probably be in one of these 3 capacities. What do I have to do over the next year? Okay, chunk that down into quarterly increments that are measurable. So what does that look like for your industry and your career? You probably already know what that is. And then have calendar reminders to be able to evaluate that and see what your trajectory is. And if you check all those friggin' boxes and it doesn't happen for you, then probably at that point is when I would say maybe I'm with the wrong company.
Yeah.
Because I've already done the math backwards. I've already paid my dues. I already accomplished A, B, and C. And it's still not available for me now. I can leave with a clear conscience, even if I like this company.
Right.
Or I like my boss or whatever. So there we have it. All right, people, get ahead. Get out of your comfort zone and figure out what the hell that's going to look like. That'll do it for episode number 12 of the Hire and Fire podcast. We are back again next week, shooting on Tuesday, so you'll probably see it on Wednesday, whatever the heck the date is, 20-something. Of January. We have a guest coming in, which will be cool. We'll introduce her next week, and we appreciate your time. We'll see you then. You just got done listening to Hire and Fire, a production by Pyra Consulting. Please check us out online on either LinkedIn, Facebook, or our website at pyraconsulting.com. That's PIRA consulting.com.